Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're going to look at how to set up a train horn on a truck. I'm going to show you how I've got my system set up, some good to-dos and not to-dos. We're going to start at the toolbox first. We're going to look at the air tank and the compressors. We're also going to look at the pressure switch and my regulator that I've got. So you want to set up some horns on your truck. The first thing you're going to want to do is pick your compressor and your tanks. So for this setup, I've got dual Air Zenith OB2 compressors. They're 4.25 CFMs each, 200 PSI, 100% duty cycle. They're pretty good compressors. For my tank, I've got a 20-gallon reservoir. Now, each one of those compressors is rated for 5 gallons, so I am technically voiding the warranty. But I've had these compressors on past setups, and they're pretty good. I don't worry about them too much with this. They don't run a whole lot anyway, just because I have so much volume. Now I do have an additional 20-gallon tank. I fill it up with my shop compressor, and I just use it for run-bys. It doesn't always stay in the bed of the truck. It's only here for when I'm testing horns. Just when I'm daily driving and I'm using the K5LA under the truck, I just use this 20-gallon tank. It's definitely enough air. So with this setup, I'm running a big regulator. I've got it regulated to 125 PSI. My pressure switch on this setup is a 175 PSI pressure switch. That's it right there. This is the pressure switch. Now a lot of people get confused about how to set all this stuff up. So when you put these compressors in, you've got this relay. It's two relays here because I've got two compressors. What you're looking at now is these yellow wires. These run to the pressure switch. This wire runs over to the pressure switch. One of these wires runs to your relay. The other runs to power. Now the power that you run this to, you want it to be an ignition source with a switch. Just because if your truck's off and say you have a leak in your tank, if it's on just solid power, and it's relying on the pressure switch to cut on and off, if your pressure drops, it's going to kick your compressors on even though your truck's turned off. It's going to drain your battery. Just make sure that's on a switch or an ignition source. So that's what controls the pressure in the tank and turning the compressors on and off. Next, when you're setting up a horn and compressors, you've got these wires right here. Now we've got double the wires because we've got double the compressors, but these are just your power wires. These run just to the compressor, and then this wire right here that I've got spliced, that is my main power wire running to the battery. It's a 4-gauge wire. I believe that's the size recommended for this setup, but plenty heavy duty. And then you also have more wires coming off of the compressor at the bottom, and that's just a ground wire. You just run them to a ground. So that is the toolbox setup. What I've got going on here is this is just my hookup to the other 20-gallon tank. And now when it's not hooked up, I've got a quick disconnect. When it's not hooked up, I've got this ran to the drain valve. So I can just drain off any moisture that's in the tank. So that's pretty handy. So that's the toolbox. Just got the compressors bolted down with the tank. Pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. I do have a 3/4 inch line running to my valve in the cab, and then from the valve it runs 1/2 inch to the horns. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and show you the main horn on the truck. This is my headache rack I got from Magnum, and this is the horn I have up on it right now, my K7 HLA. Kind of came up with this horn, but I'm gonna do a video on it here soon. Pretty cool horn. But anyway, how I've got it mounted is I've just got a puck that I had custom machined, and the horns just bolt straight onto it. So real easy to take them on and off. This is all 1/2 inch line, and the fittings are 1/2 inch, and I have them drilled out inside for maximum airflow. But I get plenty of airflow on this setup. I was a little worried about the 90s when I first set it up, but it doesn't seem like they're any issue. So that's the horns on the truck, and that's how it looks. Alright, so here's my valve. This is a Viloco valve. It's an older style. Before they started using the ground white 353 valves. I just prefer the Viloco. I just prefer them over the ground whites. They just feel a little different. This is a 2-stage valve also, so that's pretty cool. But I've got 3/4 running to the valve. That is straight from my air tank in the toolbox. This pressure gauge, that shows my regulated pressure. So right now I've got it set to 125. It runs into the valve, which is a 1/2 inch valve, so then I'm coming out with 1/2 inch. The reason I chose 1/2 inch to come out was I'm just trying to minimize the amount of air that's in the line when I let go of the valve. That way you don't have too much bleed off, because the pressure that's left past the valve has to come out of the horn before it'll stop blowing. So that just gives me a little bit more of a crisp sound when I let off of the valve. Also over here, I have my pressure switch running to switched power. Now that is constant power I've got it on. This switch is the only thing in between my power and the pressure switch. So if I flick it on, even with the truck off, the compressors come on. You can hear them. Now my tank does not leak any, and it's a good switch I'm using, so I'm not too worried about it. If you have a leaky tank or you're not sure about your switch, just be careful with the way this is set up, just because if your compressors come on when the truck is off and they run, if it's parked at night or something, you're going to have a dead battery. So that switch just runs to the pressure switch and then to constant power actually at my battery. So one thing you're going to get with the manual valve also that I forgot to tell you a minute ago is this is the advantage to a manual valve. You can quill the horn. So what I mean by quill is when you can just pull up on the lever a little and it'll start adding slow pressure to the horns. So here's what it sounds like to quill it. So you can bring it in instead of just all on. You can quill it on. And that's that K7. So that's the advantages to a manual valve over just a solenoid. If you had a solenoid valve, you would just wire a button up in the cab, run into the solenoid valve, and you'd hook that valve up just you know, a couple inches behind your air line running into the horn. So that's just the advantages to a manual valve. Of course, you do have to run air into the truck, so it adds a little bit more of a headache, but it's worth it. This is a 2014 F-150 that I have everything set up on. So this is how I have my lines running into the cab. That big one is a 3/4, and then the one that's behind it is the 1/2 inch. I just cut some plus signs into the carpet and opened them up, and then drilled with a step bit my holes. And those are also my wires to my switch that go to the pressure switch. So that's just how I have them set up, in case anyone was wondering if they're wanting to install on this year model truck. So works out pretty good. It's pretty clean for what it is. It's about the only way to get air into the cab. So we're gonna head under the truck now and look at how I have everything. All right, so now we're up under the truck. This is back where my spare tire would be. I've got it taken out. I do have my K5LA off of the truck right now. I was actually swapping it out. I'm gonna be putting a K5LLA on it, but this is a good opportunity for me to show you my mounting plate. What I did was this cross member here, I just drilled into it there and there and bolted this metal plate on. And from there I just cut out the pattern for the horn. I've got these bolts that come through, and I've got some bolts that come through right here, and they just bolt the horn on. Now, originally was going to run air to the bottom of the manifold like you normally would, but I decided to use the front port on the horn. Now it is 3/8, but as long as you run 1/2 inch to the 3/8 inlet on the manifold of a K5, you're fine. Like I said, I'm running at 125 psi, and this is 1/2 inch ID line that runs to it. There's the LLA that I'm going to be putting on it. Pretty good looking horn. But anyway, from there I just have this air line ran up through the truck over to the corner, and I will show you that next, how it goes into the bed. Okay, so we're looking at where my air line and all my wiring comes out of the bed. It runs up through here in between the cab and the bed and goes into the bed up into the toolbox. This line right here, this is what goes to the K5LA on the rear of the truck, and it goes to these fittings that I have made. This is my cut on and off, so this is how I control if I want the horn under the truck to be functional, or if I want the puck on the rack to be functional if I'm running a horn up on top of the truck. So I've just got air coming in right here. This is from the cab where my valve is at, and from here I just control which way I want it to go, to the rear of the truck or up to the headache rack. So these lines, or these wires, this is my power wire, and the yellow wire is from the pressure switch. I have both of them running up to the battery. I just have them zip tied along this line, this air hose. This is the 3/4 inch hose that runs from the toolbox that has the tank in it, and it runs through here and goes up into the cab. This is where it comes out under the seats. So that's how that's ran. My power and pressure switch wire, they just run on through the truck, zip tied to the battery. And finally, we're at the battery. This is just the power line coming to the battery, main power, pressure switch power, and I'm running an 80 amp fuse. You definitely want to run a fuse just in case anything crazy happens. It's there. But anyway, that's the setup on the truck. It's pretty straightforward and simple. It's really a lot easier than a lot of people think. But there's the K7 up top, and that's pretty much it for the setup. So I'll just give you another quick walk around of the truck, show you the valve inside, put this seat back. So there's the Viloco valve, my switch to turn the compressors on, and there's the headache rack with the K7, toolbox, extra tank, compressors, all my wiring, my other tank, and then under the truck we've got the new LLA that's going to be going on, so I'll be putting that on probably today. Anyway, that's it, guys. I appreciate it. If you wouldn't mind, like and subscribe to my page, it helped me out a lot. I'm going to try to be doing a bunch of other videos, and eventually I'm going to move to comparison videos of real train horns versus fake train horns, so you know, to see how they stack up. And I'm also going to get into the PVC horns. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot.